How do you help students connect content in the newspaper with their lives?
That's probably the neatest thing about my job, is that in literature, and I'm going to use as an example something I did today in class with a film. Um, it's just before Christmas, and we are looking at It's a Wonderful Life, and we're looking at it for several reasons. And I'll say to my kids, we use Cornell notes, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we use Cornell notes, and I'll say, I want you to remember what we've talked about in terms of Lawrence Kohlberg's taxonomy on moral development. Now, for sure, as a teacher, I've got to give them background on Lawrence Kohlberg. But I will say to them, I want you to watch this movie and decide, is the protagonist in this film in the post-conventional stage? They've got their notes, they've got my setup for this, and then there'll be discussion. Also in this film, I'm sure everybody's pretty familiar with it, there is an issue of banking, and the kids really can't get the plot unless they have an understanding of banking on an elementary level. So I can get the sense of what they don't know, and we'll do some vocabulary like what does the word fiscal mean? What do you think a run on a bank is? Or what is panic in regard to banking? And we'll go through the vocabulary, and we'll talk even maybe about FDIC or things that they don't know. And so when we hold up the newspaper today, it says the president has brought in the heads of some banking, and the president wants these bigger banks to loan more money to the smaller banks. And from that, the kids will ask me questions about what they don't know. And so in addition to the literary richness of the film they're watching, we're also getting a really elementary, entry-level lesson on how money works. And that's huge in our conversation, our national conversation now. And we will continue this conversation as we look at newspaper headlines, but they at least have their foot in the door. They know a couple of vocabulary words. They've seen the plot on It's a Wonderful Life about the bank foreclosures and mortgage foreclosures and those kinds of things. And they have a little bit of information, and from this little bit of information, they can build on that. And then I give them unasked for advice, something like never turn down an opportunity to take an economics class, because it's just crucial to your well-being to understand how money works. So back to the original question, how do we connect what's in the newspaper to the curriculum? It's look at the headlines, think about the story you're doing. There's going to be a connection. There's going to be one. And it's just fun to do. The kids like it, and you'll know the kids like it because of the questions they ask, and that's what makes my day a good day. Is when we do those kinds of things.
What other strategies do you use to build background knowledge and extend learning about topics in the news?
I'm going to take, for example, the pieces, and I use the News and Observer. That's the regional newspaper that we get here at school. And I'll take my 7th grade, for example, the social studies curriculum. Now, I'm not their 7th grade social studies teacher. I love social studies. But I'm noticing these pieces about poverty in Africa and the population explosion in Africa. And I will say to them, and connect their social studies to books we read like Waiting for the Rain, which is set in South Africa, and the issues of South Africa. So they have some scaffolding background, and I'll go back and reference Lawrence Kohlberg again, which these kids are also looking at his thoughts. And we'll see a film about Nelson Mandela, which really connects to South Africa's issues in the last couple of decades. And we'll talk about Nelson Mandela, to borrow your word, is a quintessential altruistic person, and they'll learn that word, quintessential. They'll learn altruism as a vocabulary word, and then we'll talk about what's in the news and the problems that are generally affecting Africa. And we'll say one of our prompts might be, well, think about this. Africa's far away, so how does the problem in Africa affect you sitting in this classroom in 7th grade? And maybe another question would be, what does it mean to educate a woman? And so, although we probably won't draw any conclusions that are set in stone, at least the kids will start processing some of the issues, and we'll build on it as time goes by. And we'll talk about what does it mean to educate a girl in Afghanistan, and how does that connect to America's war policy. And we just say to each other, the kids and I, a good question is better than an answer, because a good question will lead you to the next level of what you need to think about. And that may sound difficult and complex and overwhelming to try to organize a lesson on that, but if you just start with the simple idea of, here's what's in the paper, I know what you study in 7th grade social studies, how can we have a conversation about this? And the conversation that we're going to have is going to satisfy some of the curriculum goals about argument, analysis of argument, presenting an opinion, oral conversation, how to listen to each other. There's just a myriad of things in that one little 20-minute segment you can spend talking about what's going on in Africa, that the kids can walk out the door and know something that will be of value to them in the future and of value to the society. They are actually listening. They want to know these things.
How do you integrate note-taking? How do you use that strategy?
Note-taking, big skill. Last year I became a convert to Cornell Notes. And as you probably know, Cornell Notes is a very simple strategy produced by someone at Cornell University, and it has certain lines on a page where you write your main idea and where you write your details. And I support my kids with saying things to them, if I can go back and use the analogy to It's a Wonderful Life, or allude to that again. I'll say, here's the left column, main idea, essential question, what's a bank run? And we'll go back and talk about, well, do you know how much money banks have to have on hand in reserve? And you'd be surprised, a lot of middle school kids have no idea whatsoever that all the money that they deposit is not sitting in the bank, in the vault where they deposited it. So I'll say, okay, that's the main idea. If I deposit $100, how much of it is in the bank down the street? And we talk about those kinds of things. Banking will be in the Cornell Notes under the essential question. The kids will write the notes, things they didn't know, in the right side to keep on hand, because later on I might ask them to write about banking in another venue, and I'll say, go back to this such and such a date, check your notes on banking, remember when we had a wonderful life, and how does this apply to this headline in this newspaper? They can do it. They can do it. We should never underestimate what the kids can do.